And tonight at 6 o'clock, remembering George Floyd, a public visitation for the Houston native whose death has galvanized a movement for change.
It was a very good feeling to know that we all came together for a good cause and for a good purpose.
Thousands of mourners, some waiting hours in today's heat just to pay their respects. And at this hour, you can see from this live look inside the Fountain of Praise Church, people are still being allowed in, even though the visitation was set to end at 6 o'clock. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Dominique Saxa.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Gutierrez on assignment here in Southwest Houston, just outside of that church tonight. And what I want you to do is focus on this picture here. Just over my shoulder, you can see a crowd of people near that doorway there. But from this angle, what you can't see is the number of people in line. So I took my cell phone just a short time ago and take a look at this video here. We actually sped the video up so you can see that the line is on the south side of this church. It wraps around the west side of this building, around the sidewalk, down the sidewalk, and all the way out to Hillcroft, the main street in front of this church. There are a lot of people here in line still at this hour. We're told anyone in line at the top of the hour as of 6 o'clock will be able to go inside and pay their respects. As you mentioned, Dominique, there have been thousands of people who have made their way down here to Southwest Houston today. We kick off our live team coverage tonight with Brandon Walker. And Brandon, you spoke to people who came here not just to grieve, but they wanted to start change. Good evening to you.
Hey, good evening to you, Chris. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, people from all creeds, all backgrounds. They walked this path today. Now that line, as you mentioned, extends there to the side of the church. People making their way inside to say a final goodbye. People didn't know George Floyd, those in line, but they say they know his story because they've lived it, and that's why they say they're pushing for change. Among the thousands of footsteps of people from all walks,
we need to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. It starts with us.
Stood Darian Burns and Lanika McLean and Chidera Ugu and their friends here together at George Floyd's memorial with so much on their hearts.
When I looked at him, I saw my brothers. I saw my boyfriend. I saw my future black son. So it was really sad and heartbreaking to see because that could be any one of us.
McLean recently graduated college. She and thousands of Houstonians represent a new chapter in the movement for equal rights. Young adults who say George Floyd's story is their story.
And it's been happening for entirely way too long, and quite frankly, I feel like my black people are very tired of it. It's so important for all people to be together as a unit so we can actually make a change. Because as far as I'm seeing it, the same thing repeats itself. It hits the media, it goes wide, and then it dies down. We don't need to let it die down.
Inside the Fountain of Praise Church, mourners paid their respects. No need to have known Floyd personally to feel, says Donald Kirkendall.
It could have been me. It could have been anyone. But the significance is that the whole world is watching this, man, for the first time. I think there's going to be a really change about this.
Change, a word we've heard a lot of late. Change being the reason why they marched, and today why they walked down an aisle in a church to say goodbye.
And I think that something that's done in a state like Texas, if other counties, other cities see Houston doing that police reform, then they might push to do police reform in their cities as well.
And Mr. Ugu, they are responding to my question about the significance of Mr. Floyd being from Houston and what that means in terms of this national push for change, as you've heard so many mention over the past couple weeks or so. And his point there was he's hoping that Houston continues to lead by example on this, as it always does, as he said. We're live here in Southwest Houston. Chris, let's send things back to you on the other side of the church.
Brandon, thank you for that. From people now pushing to change, now to those who can help facilitate that change. Our live team coverage continues now with our senior reporter, Phil Archer. Phil, good evening to you.
Good evening, Chris. You know, as you said, the viewing is wrapping up now. We don't have the final numbers, but we're estimating better than 2,000 people made their way here to pay final respects to a man whose horrific death rocked this nation and, in the end, may have changed it forever. Most of the people who came to say goodbye today didn't know George Floyd while he lived, but in death, he's become a symbol for fear and injustice long felt by millions.
They could have been my son, they could have been my uncle, And the way he cried out for his mother at the end, that was just too much.
Hundreds waited in the broiling heat to pay their respects, and for some, that heat was too much. Medics set up a cooling tent to help them out. For those going in, social distancing and tight security. Only 15 mourners allowed inside at a time, masks and gloves mandatory. By 2 this afternoon, almost 1,700 people had filed past the casket. Among them, Governor Greg Abbott wearing the Yates School colors on his tie, Floyd's alma mater, and promising statewide police reform.
I am committed to working with the family of George Floyd to ensure we never have anything like this ever occur in the state of Texas.
And Reverend Al Sharpton, who will speak at the funeral tomorrow, urging mourners to turn sorrow into action to end racism and institutional injustice.
We are laying George to rest tomorrow, but the movement will not be going to rest. The movement will not rest until we get justice for all of these families.
So many filing past George Floyd's casket today, mourning his loss, but hoping for something better to come from it. Tomorrow, George Floyd will be eulogized here. Then the funeral open only to friends and family before he is taken to the family plot in Pearland to be buried alongside his mother. Reporting live in Southwest Houston, I'm Phil Archer. And Chris, back to you.
Phil, thank you for that. We do know that several areas were set up for parking lots so people could be shuttled down to this church here in Southwest Houston. Our live team coverage continues now with Sion Rhodes. And Sion, you've been speaking to a lot of mourners there who are also calling for change tonight.
Chris, a lot of people I'm talking to saying they wanted to be here to be a part of this moment in history, but also to make sure that history does not repeat itself.
I have a navy blue.
Vendors selling tokens to remember this day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. But for the people buying them, this is about more than a memento. It's about a movement.
You can't just sit back.
Finding a way to finally face racism and injustice in America.
It's been going on for, 400 plus years.
Maybe this could make the change.
This was so blatant. In the middle of the street, a Black American was killed. Like, we sat there and watched.
Susie Priest and her husband Sergio came to town from New York City, selling shirts with George Floyd's image and his final words.
So many times that, Black men have been killed, children, they're profiled. You go into the store, I deal with it, and I'm Hispanic. My husband, forget it, and we're dealing with it on a daily basis. And, it's disheartening, and it hurts.
For the first time, they saw, but there was many that are dead and is silently gone, and no one will say anything for them.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that this helps out.
Hoping this time change has finally come.
Not fully there yet, but I just feel that we definitely are going somewhere with this.
And folks here vowing to be a part of this movement and make sure that it does go somewhere. Reporting live in Southwest Houston, Sion Rhodes, KPRC 2. Back to you, Chris.
Sion, thank you for that. We want to take you back live inside the Fountain of Hope Church here in Southwest Houston, where you can see there are 2 single file lines that are slowly making their way down toward the front of the church. We're told that people are waiting in these lines upwards of 1 hour, where they are able to see George Floyd's body as it lies in an open casket for mourners to pass by. At times they pause, at times they pray, as they do give their final respects to George Floyd and his family. The funeral, as we mentioned, will also be here at the Fountain of Praise Church tomorrow. It's a private service. It starts at 11 a.m. and you can expect live team coverage on air and online at click2houston.com. Floyd, as you heard, will be buried in Pearland, right next to his mother at Houston Memorial Gardens. That's on Colon Boulevard. The procession will be escorted by the Houston Police Department, but according to the Pearland Police Department, the last mile of that procession will be in a horse-drawn carriage right there on Colon Boulevard. The public, we're told, is welcome to come out and pay their respects at public locations along the route, including the sidewalks that line the streets there.